So, welcome everyone to Learning Life's Family Diplomacy Dialogues. My name is Paul Lachelier. I'm the moderator for these dialogues typically. And these dialogues are part of our Family Diplomacy Initiative. The Family Diplomacy Initiative, or FDI, connects people worldwide across lines of class, country, race, and religion via the internet to share and learn together about families and citizen diplomacy with an eye to developing a core of trained family diplomats and family diplomacy ambassadors. These are volunteers to advocate for a more caring world via businesses, media, nonprofits, and governments. So that's the long term. And I'll share some information in the Zoom chat about more about FDI and the ways that you can get involved. I'm also going to be sharing the details here of the dialogue. Hold on a second here. Let me place the details of the agenda for the dialogue. So here's some information about the Family Diplomacy Initiative. And here is the structure of today's dialogue. So we will have besides my kind of moderator's introduction to the dialogue, we'll have an introduction to Ines. I'm going to pronounce your name as a Spaniard might, de Pierola, and I probably may be butchering it, but in any case, Ines will briefly introduce herself. Then we have one of our interns, Giselle, who is going to be presenting on poverty across the world, giving us some broader context, and then we'll go into greater depth with regards to hearing from particular speakers across the world. So we have a variety of people joining us, particularly from Latin America and from Africa, who will be contributing, but we do have others we anticipate will be joining also from Asia to contribute to this discussion of family and poverty. And then we'll open it up to broader discussion. So each of the speakers will have 3 to 4 minutes to kind of present about what is going on with poverty or their experience of poverty in their particular country. With that said, I'm going to let Ines go ahead and introduce herself, and then we'll turn to Giselle.
Thank you, Paul. It's so nice to be here. I'm very thankful for this opportunity. My name is Ines de Pierola. I'm a doctoral student at Oregon State University in the United States, and I study my degrees in human development and family studies, focusing more on family policies and studying how different government supports reach families in the US and other countries as well. I'm in the US for school, but I'm originally from Lima, Peru, so Spanish is my native language. So I'm happy to be here with other folks from Latin America. And yeah, I'm excited to share this time with you.
Great. So Ines I'll be coming back to Ines at particular points to help inform the dialogue based upon what you guys are saying, as she's kind of our resident expert today for this dialogue. Giselle is going to give us a kind of introduction to poverty and kind of broader context on poverty in the world. Go ahead, Giselle.
Hi, my name is Giselle, and hola for the people that speak Spanish. So I went over the latest UN reports on global poverty, and some of the points to highlight is that poverty affects 1 in 10 people worldwide. More than 3/4 of the global extreme poor live in sub-Saharan Africa and conflict affected regions of the world, with 8.9% of the population living in extreme poverty. Projected to live in extreme poverty by 2030, which isn't seemed as that much for us. For the first time ever, at least half of the world's population now receives one form of social protection benefits. So that could be seen as like something like welfare or just grants. Um, International poverty line was now raised to 2.15 PPP, which is purchasing power parity. And then working poverty has declined over the past 25 years, but trends now progress. Um, the trends now have like slowed down. So more than 240 million workers worldwide lived on less than $2.15 per day. It's also seen that 1.4 billion adults in developing regions are excluded from formal land markets, meaning that they don't own any property or not given the rights to own that property. And then on top of that, women are seen to own less than 24% of land documents. And I guess you would ask, how does this impact families around the world? Well, out of the 1.1 billion people living in like dimensional poverty, over half of those people are children. So that shows that there's not a, a stable family structure due to the lack of support and money. Yeah, so I want to share. I don't know if I can share my screen, but I have
Yes,
to.
you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Let me- mm, it says it's not enabled. I'm not able to.
Let me see about share. Um, Go ahead and request if you can. Share all windows, share button.
Okay.
There you go.
Perfect. So this is the first um, chart that I have where you can see multidimensional poverty, with the darkest red being that it's up to 75% of the population that's living in poor conditions. And um, the larger that it is, it shows that it's like just a larger percentage. So you see a lot of the larger inflamed areas uh, are in what you would know as like the global south. A lot of sub-Saharan Africa, even a little bit in South America. So, and a big portion of it being in Asia and India. And it also down here, because multi-dimensional also is showing like the different kinds of lack of in education and health and living standards. So not just monetary, but so yeah, so it's kind of the same. You see that there's a big, like what you see in up here is kind of the same down in the health and then living standards as well as education. If you have any questions, let me know. And then this is another graph showing that the portion of employed populations living below $2.15 a day in 2017. So not 2017 versus 2015 and 2024. So
Great.
yeah.
To kind of summarize, it sounds like, and from what I know about poverty, I think one thing to convey that's important, you can stop sharing, uh, Giselle, thank you. Is that poverty is actually going down, has been going down for a number of decades across the world, but that apparently the pace has slowed in poverty reduction, and it's having impacts on families, among other things. Poor families are more likely to be broken up uh, as individuals seek employment elsewhere. So parents, especially, may move to other countries and be separated from their families. This is a condition that's common in a lot of countries that large parts of the population have to move to other countries in order to get employment and send money home. So that's one of the major ways in which families are impacted. So we are going to transition to having done these introductions, kind of broader introductions, to hearing from a variety of people across the world who are joining us from different countries and have prepared some remarks. So I'm going to start with I believe, and Leo and Giselle, just want to remind you guys to take screenshots throughout and to take screenshots not just of the group, but also of speakers as well. By the way, I'm going to, before we forget, we should take, if you have not introduced yourself as yet, please do so in the Zoom chat. Just make sure to include your city and your country so we know where you're coming from, and then whatever other information you would like to share about yourself. Let's take a screenshot to kind of to get everybody presented on screen. So yes, so those of you who have done this before know that you should turn your cameras on so that we can see you. And Leo and Giselle, you guys ready to take screenshots? I'll count on three. Okay, on three. If you can turn on your cameras, 1, 2, 3, smile. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We are going to hear first from Eric Kajinija, who is joining us from Burundi in Africa. Eric, do you want to share? Oh, you are muted for some reason. Let me see. Um, Eric, you might need to just come off the dialogue, like turn off your the Zoom and come back into the Zoom, and that might reactivate your volume or your sound. And then if that doesn't work, turn off your computer completely, then turn it back on. That's usually those are the two problems. It's like trying to wake up your sound. So we'll come back to you, Eric, when you're ready. So I'm going to have there you are. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, thank you. I think I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. So I'm gonna spend a few minutes sharing the poverty here, how it affects my family here in Africa. Um, I'm Eric from Burundi, uh, here in East Africa community. So it's here in the great region of Africa. So I'd like to say poverty is like a pandemic. It's a worst everything I've never heard because it affects my family. They used to have a business and say a successful business where they used to have money. And you know, life is up and downs. So the financial situation declined because of my parents used to have a bar and they bring illegal alcohol. So when the polls came, so everything was changed. So man, you know, when people are successful in the life, um, when people are successful in life, they have the other names here in Africa. For example, if you are boss lady, they have the other names. So my mom used to have those names as a boss lady. So what happened to me, to my family, was when the business was not going well and things now they're down. I mean, they're down. Um, I can say ancestors and conflicts began in my family because my dad and I mean the family from my dad, they start not to listen to my mom. I can say because my father uh, is a drunkard, but he's a drunkard. When people are taking too much alcohol, they make it too disorder. So my father didn't know, was not aware how the situation now is. He was like living the life they used to have before. So my mom was like, I can say, was uh, diligent and aware of the situation. So when people have money, they get a problem of like spending the way they used the money a long time ago. So my dad was not aware of just want to be on that level we used to have. So and this begin like my dad said, my wife is respecting me. I want to do what I want, but because my mother say, hey, be aware, this is what happened here. So don't do this. And this is we affect our because it was a school. And we have people from we have 5 children, and we need the right to study. So my mom will say, hey, they need to go to school. Do this and this. So what's gonna happen? So so my father said, this is a respect. So all the family, even my grandmom, say, oh, my son taught me you don't respect. So the conflicts began uh, because because of those little things. To the river, well, I can say my grandmom used to come. He likes to come at home, so he can greet only my father because. Uh, because we are not a party or because we are not accepting how father is using the money and the name because there's a not we are suffering from that. So what I can say, he can come and greet only a parent. Have you ever, my father, have you ever seen like ever seen a grandmom where he can come to the house and doesn't she doesn't greet her grandchildren? It's like something and define. So
Um,
the
Er-
relationship.
Eric, I'm gonna cut you off just for now, but want to kind of summarize what you said because we were having some audio issues, and then also I'm also going to mute you because there's some interference. But we were having some audio issues, but also I think language kind of issues. But let me kind of try to summarize based upon what you said, and also thankfully some things I know about you and your family. So if you had a hard time kind of understanding him, Eric is, as I mentioned, from Burundi. As I understand it, his family had an alcohol business. They were selling a bar, and they were selling alcohol. However, they were doing it illegally, as you might imagine, in a country which doesn't have a lot of formal employment. I suspect that that was an informal business. In other words, it was not legally registered. And so they provide the alcohol until the police came. The police stopped it, so they lost their revenue. But there's also this problem that his father has been misusing the money of the family rather than investing it in their education. I gather, is an alcoholic and has been misusing the family's money that could be invested in their income, their housing, et cetera, and so forth. Eric, is that roughly correct? Okay, good, and really appreciate you giving a perspective on your particular family in Burundi. I want to turn to Bolivia. because we have a number of people joining us from Bolivia, from the Fundación Levántate Mujer, which is a foundation, a nonprofit foundation in Bolivia that is working with women who are victims of domestic violence, and they have contributed to our dialogues on domestic violence, but they also, of course, can speak to poverty as well, because oftentimes gender-based violence and poverty are intertwined. It is to say, it can happen more often in conditions of poverty. So Alfredo, do you want to introduce the women that you have with us who will be speaking? And I think what may be best is that if we start with just I think there are at least three of you, but that we come back to. So we start with you, Alfredo, and maybe Jeanette, and then we come back to Juana and Jeanette, your two other speakers later, to kind of intersperse this, if that makes sense to you. And they're going to be speaking in Spanish, everybody. So if you don't speak Spanish, you should turn on your captions. Do that by clicking more, and then turn on captions, and then you have to turn on that up arrow and turn on translation. Go ahead, Alfredo.
Listo. Muchas gracias, Paul. Mi nombre es Alfredo. Soy director de la Fundación Levántate Mujer. Y como bien dice Paul, nosotros trabajamos muy de cerca con lo que son personas en situación de vulnerabilidad en todo Bolivia. Parte de esto nos lleva a ver situaciones de violencia y dentro de esto también situaciones de pobreza, la cual están ligadas de una manera muy cercana. Actualmente vamos a contar con el testimonio de Janet. Janet es coordinadora de la ciudad del Alto, la primera o segunda ciudad más grande de Bolivia a nivel de población. Y ella nos va a poder contar un poco cuáles son las situaciones de pobreza y cómo la fundación ha desarrollado una estrategia para luchar contra este problema a la par de la violencia de género, y después escucharemos testimonios de mujeres que desde un proceso de capacitación y empoderamiento han logrado desarrollar emprendimientos económicos para su bienestar y el de sus familias. Entonces, los dejo con Janet.
And Janet, so before you go, actually, it might be better to have Juana and Jeanette speak first about their family situations, because we're going to come back later and talk about the solutions, the ways in which different organizations are addressing poverty for families. So if that works for you.
Perfecto, entonces empezamos con los testimonios y después les contamos cómo hemos ido trabajando con ellas. Janet, ¿puedes darle pie a las señoras entonces para que participen? Gracias, Paul, gracias por la invitación. Saludos desde Santa Cruz.
Con placer.
Tal vez damos la apertura a Juana. Juanita, puedas activar tu audio y puedas dar tu testimonio.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Juana Rocha, soy del Alto, de La Paz, Bolivia, y bueno, soy madre, tengo una familia monoparental extendida, lo cual quiere decir que yo cuido a mi hija y tengo a mi cuidado también a mi mamá, ¿no? Bueno, yo he podido acceder a una profesión, la gestión 2019. Soy abogada de profesión, no hace mucho, ¿no? Me he dedicado a mi carrera, pero anteriormente, antes de tener esta carrera, yo me dedicaba sobre todo al tejido para la manutención de mi hija, toda vez que yo la he tenido que mantener sola, incluso desde el embarazo, ¿no? Y me ha servido mucho como una forma de emprendimiento, tanto el aprender a tejer, el aprender a costurar, son actividades económicas que yo realizaba, ¿no? Al haber conseguido una profesión, yo requería como mujer y para realizarme también, realizar trabajos como abogada, ¿no? Actualmente mi hija tiene 11 años, se encuentra en la preadolescencia y me he dado cuenta de que necesita mucho de mi cuidado, de mi atención para sobrellevar esta etapa, ¿no? Entonces he tenido que dejar de lado mi profesión, ya no me dedico de manera parcial, total a mi carrera. Eventualmente puedo fungir como abogada, pero más me dedico a esto que es el tejido, la costura, donde yo realizo actividades y estoy al cuidado de mi hija, estoy en la atención con mi hija. A mí me ha ayudado mucho Levántate Mujer a partir de esta experiencia de conocerlas y poder, sobre todo, apoyar este mi emprendimiento, ayudarnos a buscar espacios de comercialización, porque evidentemente la situación económica en Bolivia está difícil, ¿no? Venimos de un tiempo de 53 días de bloqueos que no hemos generado dinero y en ese entendido, para nosotros es de mucha ayuda poder generar espacios donde podamos vender nuestros productos, ¿no? Eh, para mí ha sido esa relación entre Levántate Mujer y mi persona y el emprendimiento que yo desarrollo eh, para salir de esta situación, generar dinero, apoyar a mi familia, pero sin dejar este tema de cuidados que implica también asumir una familia, ¿no? Eso, y por otro lado también, si bien es cierto, por ejemplo, esta situación de la violencia en Bolivia lo tenemos marcado porque pasa que si bien no lo has vivido en la casa, socialmente lo vives, ¿no? O sea, yo veo nuestra condición indígena, nuestra condición de mujeres, a veces son limitantes para desarrollarnos, ¿no? Entonces también nos pasa esta situación, ¿no? Eso es cuanto yo podría compartir con ustedes desde mi experiencia, desde este apoyo que yo tengo en Levántate Mujer, en mi emprendimiento, que me ha ayudado mucho para estar de lado con mi familia, con mi hija. Eso, muchas gracias.
Great. Thank you, Juana. As I understand it, Juana, you are engaging currently in weaving and sewing to directly kind of support your family, but you aspire to become a lawyer in part to kind of protect women in the future. Is that right?
No, yo ya soy abogada, pero
Ah,
desarrollaba mi trabajo a un tiempo total, ¿no? Salía a 7 de la mañana, volvía a las 10 de la noche a mi casa, por lo tanto no me podía dedicar a mi hija ni a mi casa, ¿no? Entonces, esta etapa de la preadolescencia para mi hija es importante y para mí también compartir con ella. Entonces, por eso he dejado, no del todo la carrera, pero sí me dedico más tiempo a mis emprendimientos, que es donde estoy en casa, donde puedo acompañar a mi hija, ¿no? Eso.
wow. So it sounds like you're doing a lot. You're both a lawyer and you're taking care of your child and doing sewing and other kind of handwork with her. Is that right?
Sí, sí, o sea, no tengo muchos casos, ahora tengo dos casos que no me dedican mucho tiempo, ¿no? Son revisiones, mis clientes revisan, pero son dos casos. Entonces, me dedico a costuras no muy grandes tampoco, ¿no? A veces tengo 30 chalecos, ¿no? Em, También tejemos y tanto en el tejido hacemos llaveros a crochet, ¿no?
Hmm.
Y mi hija, por ejemplo, también la innovo a que pueda hacer estos tejidos, ¿no? Y hacemos tejiditos con ella también, ¿no? Entonces es parte de mi acompañamiento con mi hija, pero también es enseñarle a mi hija algo que también en adelante le puede ayudar, ¿no? Hace poco yo he pasado por una operación de la vesícula y he entrado en terapia intensiva al salir de la operación. Entonces ahí me di cuenta de que yo tengo que enseñar algo a mi hija por si un día yo no estoy, ¿no? Entonces, a partir de eso ya hacemos los crochet, los tejidos con mi hija, ¿no? Entonces, en alguna medida estoy ayudándole a que pueda ser algo independiente, aunque es todavía pequeña, ¿no? Pero que pueda empezar algo en su vida.
Great. Jeanette, who do you want to introduce next?
Vamos a dar continuidad con Janet, ¿no? Desde su experiencia también de trabajo con la fundación y el tema, ¿no? Del emprendimiento al que ella se dedica. Janet, tienes libre la cámara.
Muy buenas tardes. Un gusto y un placer saludar a todos y todas acá. Para mí realmente es una alegría, es algo muy bonito el poder compartir con tanta gente hermosa. Mi nombre es Janet Sarabia. Tengo 2 hijos, tengo al esposo también. Mi emprendimiento es de cosmética natural. Bueno, traje un poquito para mostrarles. Hago lo que son shampoos, acondicionadores, pero tratando de rescatar nuestros conocimientos ancestrales, como son las hierbas. Tenemos bastante hierba acá en La Paz, en Santa Cruz, en el Beni y demás. Entonces se trata de ir rescatando esos conocimientos, pero sobre todo también este emprendimiento a mí me ayuda para poder dar y hacer que culminen sus estudios mis hijos y también obviamente para ayudar en casa. He seguido bastante bendecida en que me hayan invitado a la Fundación Levántate Mujer, ya que acá en mi negocio no andaba muy bien, no estaba muy estructurado. Sin embargo, en este tiempo que yo he podido participar de la gestión empresarial que lo dan acá en Sartasinguarmi, pues yo he podido consolidar un poco más mi negocio, mi emprendimiento, que espero que a la larga, y tengo fe de que a la larga sea un gran emprendimiento, lleguemos a hacer algo grande, ¿no es cierto? Entonces, en Sartasin Warmi yo me he podido formar o he podido aprender lo que es gestión empresarial, haciendo mi plan de negocio, viendo en qué cosas estaba fallando, he podido distinguir qué cosas estaba haciendo mal, pero qué cosas también estaban encaminadas. Entonces, me ha ayudado bastante a consolidar lo que es mi emprendimiento. Yo llegué a esta fundación por medio de una amistad que me comentó, estaba intentando buscar, ver cómo es que podía hacer, cómo es que podía consolidar mejor mi emprendimiento y demás. Es así como llegué a la fundación. Ahora, pues, gratamente tengo la alegría de ser parte, ¿no? de esta familia. A la final hemos formado una familia de mujeres que nos apoyamos, donde hay sinergia, nos vamos apoyando, nos vamos aconsejando desde donde nosotros sabemos y lo que hemos ido aprendiendo. Me alegra bastante porque ya también la fundación nos está apoyando buscándonos espacios donde nosotros podamos comercializar nuestros productos y esto a nosotros nos ayuda. Personalmente a mí me ayuda en gran manera porque puedo hacer conocer mi producto. Si van conociendo mi producto y tengo más lugares donde vender, si se abren estas ferias y demás, pues a mí me ayuda en la economía. Y si tengo economía, pues puedo seguir ayudando a mis hijos en la carrera que ellos están estudiando, apoyarlos más y apoyar también en casa. Eso es lo que les puedo compartir.
Great. I think, some of the things I pull out from what you said, Jeanette, and Juana, is the importance of support from other women who are likewise in business and the ways in which you can support each other, but also that the Fundación Levántate Mujer, the organization with which you work with, is helping you to access markets for your products that you're selling, and in your case, cosmetics, which sounds great. I do want to bring us to focus and have us turn. We will come back to members of Fundación Levántate Mujer in Bolivia, but I want to bring us to other parts of the world where we have people joining us from Pakistan, from I'm just looking at who's with us currently. And then I believe so we lost, we had somebody from Nigeria, but we'll hopefully be rejoining. But I want to turn us to Fatima Shah, who is joining us from Pakistan with her son, which is great to see. And they're both going to be speaking about poverty in Pakistan. So Fatima is one of our family diplomats, and her son is probably going to be joining us as one of our family diplomats. They both speak English, and Fatima has a long experience. She's a former lawyer and was a teacher working with poor families in rural parts of Pakistan. And so she's going to share some of her experience. And her son, who I believe is 11 or 12 or 13. How old is Mili? Oh, you're muted, by the way. You just need to unmute.
Oh,
there you go.
He's 10 years old.
10 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
A mature 10 years old. So, Fatima, if you would go ahead and share, and Mili, great to hear from you too.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I always love to talk about everything you ask for. And today the topic is very important for me because you also have mentioned that it has a great link, the poverty has a great link with GBV. And GBV is also one of the topic which I am working for. So,
And just so people may not know what GBV is gender-based violence.
it's gender-based violence, okay? And in Pakistan, like other countries, it's very common. And the most bigger victims are women, children, and transgenders. So again, if we link the poverty with it, first I would like to talk about the poverty. According to the data, 40% people in Pakistan are living below the poverty line. Like the life is below the poverty line. But I personally don't believe in it. It's more than that. Because I see people, I work with rural areas. I'm basically, if I introduce myself a little bit, I'm a teacher's trainer. I work with the communities as well. I go in far-flung areas to educate people about women education. Because unfortunately, discrimination and such kind of things are well knitted in the fabric of our society. So let's come to the poverty again. I will explain the link between GBV and poverty. Poverty basically breaks families, what I believe. And women and children pay the bigger price, women and children. How? I'll explain. First, what are the causes of poverty in Pakistan? People are educated. Even then, low employment, unemployment is the major issue. I personally have done LLB, master's and MPhil education, which is the highest qualification. But still, in private sector, when I finish the contract, I wait for the months and adjust everything because I'm the whole sole earner. So I face unemployment all the time. I sign the contract, then after a year or 8 months, the contract is finished. So again, I face the problem. Even I'm the privileged one. I'm the woman who works a lot. I have been spent almost 17, 18 years in this sector, even then. So when I think about the people who are unprivileged, who are uneducated, how they will be suffering. Um, the wages are very low, even the salaries are low. When I start earning, I hardly fulfill everything. My child's education, rents, bills, food, especially food, that is important. Like, let me give you the example. I've spent time in America, and whenever I go to the grocery stores, I used to see that the meat and the bread, the prices were a bit low when it becomes like after a few days, let's suppose, like the price of the chicken decrease from $20 to $10 after a week. It happens in America, I think. So in Pakistan, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. If the rice is, let's suppose, $10 per kg, for me, it's $10 per kg. For my maid, my helper, it's $10 per kg. Her earning is very less than me, but even then, she pays the same price. So imagine I have an only son, me and like two, three people, we eat. And my maid has 6 children, husband and woman as well. And her wages is also very low. She also pays the same price for that food which we eat, the basic need. So these are the causes: the low salaries, the low wages, unemployment, and um, the low employment opportunities, you can say. No micro businesses, nothing else. And
And
unfortunately,
And Fatima, can you tell us about, so you've very nicely kind of explained kind of the difficulties, low unemployment, and then you're paying the same prices for basic foods everybody needs. Um, but what have you observed, and Millie, to the extent that he can you can share as well, what have you observed are the impacts on families? Because clearly
oh yeah,
gender-based
yeah, yeah,
violence is one of them.
yeah.
But tell us more about the impacts on families in Pakistan of that poverty.
Okay, that's a very good question. I was coming towards it. Like I had already told you that GBV and poverty has a great link together. Poverty basically breaks families. How? When a man doesn't earn enough, the woman suffers, the children suffers at home, and it breaks relationships. It breaks families. So that's why, like low income, no income, that definitely the women and children suffers. When women start working, she doesn't spend on herself. She spends most of her, like 90 or 95%, on her children, on household items, on food, because like the wages are also low. So that's why the women also get frustrated. So think about the men and female, how the healthy relationship can be developed, and the same impact goes on children as well. Similarly, when you don't have money, child marriages are very common in Pakistan because of the poverty. People feel that the daughters are burden on us, and under 18 marriages are very common in Pakistan. I know many people, many rural areas where these things are common because gender discrimination also exists in Pakistan because of poverty. When they can afford 2 children, they can go to school, they choose boys, not girls. So again, I must say that discrimination is well knitted in the fabric of our society because of poverty. They allocate women or girls to the household and send their boys to school. It's very common. It's very common in Pakistan.
And
Similarly,
so
similarly, one is a major point which people are suffering: domestic violence. Women don't even talk about rights because they are bearing all type of abuses because of the shelter, because of the food, women are uneducated. They cannot earn enough because of their children. They suffer a lot. They bear physical violence, emotional, mental, financial, every kind of violence, but they don't leave men because of the shelter. So it comes with poverty. Yes, your
Yeah.
question, please.
Yeah, no, that's great. Would love to hear from Millie. You have thoughts on and your experience of kind of observing your mom's work and your own kind of observations on poverty and the family.
So let them know your observation, what you have observed.
So, first of all, I would like to say about families in Pakistan and poverty. Pakistan is a very beautiful country and have rich cultures and religious festivals. One of the most popular festival is Eid. In Eid, people buy new clothes and things for themselves and each other. They cook tasty food for each other and their favorite food also. But in the festival, I observed that some of the children are in torn clothes, sell things like balloons, masks, etc. They are not happy. I never seen them happy. Why? Because of poverty. They can't afford anything. They can't afford their happiness. That
Mhm. And how you are happy?
I am happy because my mom is well educated and do a better job and pay my happiness. So that's why I'm always there is always a smile on my face.
That's
What people should do if they are, what they should do to decrease the poverty or eradicate poverty.
To decrease poverty, they should do the work which my mom do, like educating girls
Very
educating girls so they can earn money and make their children happy. And I have plans in future to be like my mom.
So you plan to become a lawyer or an educator and to help empower women who are poor? Is that what you're saying, Millie?
I want to be educated.
Mm. That's great. That's fantastic. By the way, this to me is the power of family diplomacy at its best. Is when we actually hear not just from us as individuals, but from our children and grandparents, etc., coming to the conversation. So really appreciate Fatima and Millie having you guys with us. I want to turn to Ines de Pierola because I want to remind you guys she's kind of our resident expert on this dialogue, and to get your thoughts on what's been shared thus far, based upon what you know, it would be great to hear from you.
Thank you, Paul. Sorry, the last part did cut a little bit. My thoughts on and that
Your
part
your
went.
your thoughts on what's been said thus far, and
Oh,
then just your own research, to the extent that
mhm,
it's relevant to the conversation.
mhm. Yeah, I think all these stories are great. As you mentioned, Paul, I really appreciate. I think most of these stories tie on like community support and especially support among women. I really enjoy the stories of the women in Bolivia, and this is also related to what Fatima just said about empowering women and the power of each other and building these communities to bring forward whatever business, education, or whatever the community is setting their mind to. I also, something that I'm very passionate about and relates to what I'm studying, and that especially Juana's story remind me of. Juana was mentioning how she's a lawyer, but she also has a daughter that she has to take care of. And this is why she's not able to work as a lawyer full time because she also has other responsibilities at home with caring for her daughter. And this is something that I'm very interested on. Right now, I'm studying this issue mostly in the US, but me being from Peru and listening to all of you, we can see how this is a worldwide issue of women having to choose between caring and careers. It's not only get a woman an education, get a woman a career. It's also what do we do with the care at home when we don't have supports, when we don't have resources to complete these tasks. So yeah, that's something interesting that I would love to hear your thoughts about. How do we support women in, yeah, growing their careers, growing their businesses, but sometimes we forget that they also have to take care of their children, to take care of their families, and all of these responsibilities at home that are not always shared with a partner or shared with someone else. I think, as we said already, community can play a huge role in this and getting the help of friends and other women. But I do believe governments, businesses, and we need to change it in a bigger scale to support women in this transition, because we sometimes expect for just like education to be the solution of everything, but like, which helps a lot, obviously, having an education and a career, but we don't always think of the differences and obstacles that women are more likely to face, because generally women are the ones who are more burdened with taking care of their families and their children. So this is something that I keep thinking about is we cannot really expect women to progress in their careers if we're not giving them other types of support with these tasks of caring in the family. So I would love to hear your thoughts, everyone's thoughts on this. And yeah, it's very interesting. I think it's great. I loved Juana's stories and how she's now a lawyer and she's still being able to manage a few cases. But of course, we all have to choose and prioritize what is important at this stage of life. And in this stage of life, she needs to care for her daughter, and that's very important too. So I keep thinking about how to balance these two things.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I think what one thing to and check me if I'm wrong on this, Ines, but the sense I get is that given the same amount of money and opportunity, women are more likely to invest that money. So, for instance, if they get a job, et cetera, and so forth, in their families and their communities than men. Is that correct?
Um, yeah, maybe, but I'm more saying like the difference in opportunity to progress in your career and or your education when you also have to care for your family members. Sometimes men are not expected to assume these roles in the home as much as women are. So it puts you in a position where you have to choose between your career and your family, and that's an obstacle that, of course, I'm sure some men face too, but worldwide it's mostly women facing this issue of having to choose between staying home with their children or progressing in their career and their education. And I think the only way we can support women in making these decisions is through bigger like community supports, government supports, because we cannot do it all alone. No one can. So it's something interesting to think about.
Hmm. Great. Thanks, Ines. Alfredo, and then we'd love to hear from Maria. By the way, please, I encourage you to share whatever thoughts and questions that you might have,
Mhm.
additions to the Zoom chat. So for those of you, and then also Ines, if you have any resources or things to share where people can read more about not only your work,
Mhm.
but also more broadly resources to better understand poverty in the family, that would be great. So by
Mhm.
all means, everybody share to the Zoom chat and let us know your thoughts if we don't
Mhm.
happen to get to you. But also you can raise your electronic hand to let us know if you'd like to speak. Alfredo, you had your hand up. Did you want to speak? Oh.
Sí, solo para agregar algo de lo que decía Inés, ¿no? Ver cómo en contextos latinoamericanos, no solo el tema de tener una carrera es suficiente para poder generar recursos o salir de la pobreza. Las oportunidades de las mujeres muchas veces están limitadas. Juana, a pesar de tener una carrera de abogada previo a empezar su emprendimiento, ha tenido limitaciones que la han llevado a poder desarrollarse. Entonces hablamos de distintos pisos dentro de la estructura social y económica que evitan poder salir de estos estados de pobreza y necesitar que mujeres que sobre todo son más vulnerables que los hombres en el ejercicio de derechos y acceso a oportunidades, puedan lograr esta meta. Hay veces depende también de enfocarse en otro tipo de sentidos, como lo hizo Juana con su familia, para poder lograr esta meta, ¿no? Entonces, hay veces dogmatizamos el estudio universitario como ya una herramienta. Sí lo es, sí
Ujú.
apoya, pero lamentablemente el contexto muchas veces no lo permite tampoco, a pesar de poder tener este acceso, que ya es un logro. Y necesitamos muchos más logros para eso y eso va a depender de cómo como sociedad podamos estructurar oportunidades para el resto. Solo para completar eso de Inés, disculpen.
No,
Mhm.
totalmente de acuerdo, Alfredo.
Great. Thanks, Alfredo. Um, by all means, raise your electronic hand if you would like to contribute to the conversation, but I'm going to turn to Maria, who is joining us, I think, from Kenya, but is from Uganda and has a kind of interesting story to share about a particular family that she knows.
Um, Thank you, Paul. I will take off my video so that I don't lose connection, if that is okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. Paul, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. So thank you very much, Mr. Paul Ashlier, for this opportunity to speak about Uganda, about poverty and how it affects livelihoods. While I am no expert on the subject, I was born and raised in Uganda and lived for 30 years in Uganda before I migrated to the United States of America. So I have lived experiences from many of the different things and relatives and family. So according to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, about 12 million Ugandans, which is roughly 27% of the population, live below the poverty line. And poverty is significantly more concentrated in the rural areas, which is around 32%, compared to the urban areas, which is about 19% of the population there. So this means that majority of Uganda's poor are rural households. And this means they face deeper deprivation in health, education, and living standards. So today I'm going to share with you a story of a beautiful lady named Nalwada. Nalwada was a resilient and hardworking little girl who was born into a middle-class family in Luwero, which is central Uganda. Growing up, Nalwada's home was always flocked with relatives from extended families. And if anyone in the extended family was unwell or facing any hardship, they came to Nalwada's father for assistance. As a child, she never lacked. However, all this changed when her father was killed during a war which broke out in Uganda, and in particular Luwero, where her family lived. Nalwada's father, being a prominent man, unfortunately made him a target, and he was killed. So at 12 years of age, Nalwada had become an orphan. Her mother, who was a stay-home mother at that time, was suddenly left to fend for her 7 children all by herself. Now, unfortunately, which is a very common practice for us in Uganda, Nalwada's father passed away without writing a will. So what this meant was that his property was claimed by his relatives. Sometimes poverty brings out the worst in families, unfortunately. So Nalwada's mother and her 7 children were forced out of their family home, and they had to go to the village where Nalwada's mother's parents lived in Masaka, which at the time was a very poor rural setting that they went to. So with their new life, they turned to agriculture as their source of income. With their limited income, the family had to make a choice of who would go to school. Naturally, Nalwada's brothers were chosen to be educated, and the girls stayed behind to tend to the home. One of Nalwada's aunts advised the mother to send her, as she was a responsible girl, to Kampala, which is Uganda's capital city, to work as a housemaid to bring in more income for the family. So when she was there, she was a nanny for children. She was very hardworking and great, but still very naive. She was naive enough to be exploited by the security guard at the home where she was staying, and he got her pregnant. So once her employer found out that she was pregnant, she was sent on the first bus back to her village home in Masaka with no salary and only her personal belongings that she had come with. Now, Nalwada was back home with no income. But despite all this, she managed to deliver her baby in unhealthy, unhygienic conditions in a health center, and she delivered a bouncing baby boy. Now, this brought more financial strain on her family because now they already had her siblings and she was here with a child. So her family, the greater family, advised her mother to marry off Nalwada to an older man that grew coffee in the village. This was a wealthy man by the village standards. But in his house and in her marriage, Nalwada was beaten, abused, and mistreated. She stayed in her marriage for the sake of the money that her older abusive husband was contributing to her mother and the siblings' welfare. Now, in the meantime, Nalwada quietly learned how to braid hair from a neighbor, and this was her ticket out of her marriage. Once she delivered her second son, which was her first son in this marriage, she left her child with her mother and started a new life back in Kampala. And this time, she was living in a slum. So a slum, just to give some context, a slum is a heavily populated urban area, which is characterized by extreme poverty, substandard housing, and it's overall unsafe and unhealthy. So while she was there, she braided hair at different salons and gathered a little income. With this, she invited a sister of hers to join her, and her sister also got a job selling food in the market. So they had fairly good income to be able to send back home to sustain the family back home. However, the entire family was living hand to mouth, and when tragedy struck and their mother needed to be transferred to a referral hospital for treatment for an intestinal complication, they could all not afford to pay for an ambulance to take her to the hospital. So a good Samaritan took their mother to hospital, and that's Mulago Hospital, which is Uganda. Well, at that time, still is Uganda's referral hospital. So one evening when Naulado was the steps of the hospital, just thinking where she would get $19, which is 70,000 Ugandan shillings, that was needed for the first dose of her mother's medication, she was broken because she didn't have this. So according to Economics by Design, only a small fraction of Ugandans can afford full healthcare costs. About 1/3 of total health spending comes directly from households, meaning many families face catastrophic expenses when illness strikes. And when death struck, unfortunately, her mother passed on, Nalada and her families lost their matriarch, but it broke their hearts more that they purchased their mother's coffin with a loan. They could not afford to give their mother a befitting funeral, which, according to Ugandan standards and also from research from the Daily Monitor, a Ugandan local newspaper, includes feeding hundreds of mourners, building a cement grave, and transporting their deceased bodies back to their ancestral home. So most from this research that I did, our poor in Uganda are rarely able to afford to have these funerals. So people have to sell land, livestock, or borrow money. So in Naloda's case, her family sold livestock and they was also supported by the larger extended family. So as we've seen in this story, Naloda's family poverty in Uganda is strongly multi-generational. Over half of Ugandans, which is 53.1%, that the ones who are poor were multidimensionally poor in 2024. And children born into poor households face a high risk of remaining poor as adults. Rural families, female-headed households, and child-headed households are especially vulnerable, with the survival often depending on community support or the support of extended family members or family members that are out of the country. And sadly, so the children in the poor households will lack education, healthcare access, reducing the chances of escaping this poverty. So Narada's children, unfortunately, were not educated, and they survived on informal income, but they broke the cycle by educating their children. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Maria. It's your story kind of very nicely connects, and tragically, but connects a variety of things, from poverty to living in slums to having to depend in part on marrying girls early, and then that leads to violence in some cases, and it sounds like it underscores the importance of what Alfredo and the Fundación Levántate Mujer are doing, which is focusing on employment a lot to try to empower women and get them out of these difficult situations. So that's really really helpful to support these things. So I want to return to Latin America. We have Gustavo, who's joining us from as I mentioned earlier, on New York, but is actually from Costa Rica, and he's going to speak. But then we're also going to come back to Fundación Levántate Mujer because we have not heard from Jeanette, and I think there's somebody else Sylvia Chura. I don't know if Sylvia is supposed to speak as well, but Gustavo first, then Jeanette, and then possibly Sylvia.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Gustavo. I am originally from Costa Rica. My first language is Spanish. So I just want to say felicidades a todas las mujeres que nos acompañan por sus emprendimientos y su fuerza. De verdad, un orgullo. Muchas gracias. So I would like to provide first some context about Costa Rica. First of all, Costa Rica is a small country located in Central America, between Panama and Nicaragua. So we have like all the north part of the continent, like United States, Canada, Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and then Costa Rica. And then if you keep going, then you will go to Colombia, Bolivia, Brazil, Peru. So I'm currently 38 years old. I left Costa Rica when I was 30. And back there, I was working for the government. Costa Rica is a very expensive country to live in. The lowest rent in areas with the highest hiring and hiring hubs. The lowest you can find there is for $150, and it's not great accommodation. We're talking about just a small bedroom in a shared apartment. You have access to a small bathroom, small section to cook, not even a kitchen, but that's it. No living room, no patio, no nothing. So the cost of life is already reducing the amount of people being born every year in Costa Rica. The population is rapidly shrinking. The lack of employment and proper income has increased drug trafficking and sadly human trafficking as well, with all that brings mostly violence. Costa Rica in the past 15 years has become a very important drug trafficking hub, from drugs going to Europe and going to North America, and these has targeted the most vulnerable people. We're talking about teenagers, young adults, low-income families who see their youngest members in the family incarcerated or being victims of the violence. So the increase in poverty, and also to provide more context, and these numbers might be a bit misleading, but poverty in Costa Rica is classified as households with incomes below $260 per person. Depending on where you are, $260 means more or less, but in Costa Rica, we're talking about like $150 for rent alone. We're talking $110 for the rest of your needs. So back to my experience. When I was 30 years old, I was working in Costa Rica for the government, and my salary was $450. Back then, I was paying $200 for rent, and that would leave me for $100 for food, like around $80 for gas and maintenance. I was driving a motorcycle because I could not afford a car. And the rest, which is about like $80, it will be used for any like other needs or things that I was not counting for in my budget, and there were no room for savings. So my reality was that in Costa Rica, I did not have an opportunity to improve my situation, to access basic basic needs or wants, however you want to see it. Like for example, having your own house, like secure housing. Also, things like forming a family was not an option. So I had to leave my country. Luckily, I was able to access scholarship. As Alfredo was mentioning before, education is a great tool, is not all. Education alone has not been able to get me out of the situation where I can have access to these things like housing and a savings account, but it has been a great tool. Thankfully, I was able to find a scholarship and I ended up working for the University of Massachusetts, living in New York. And it's been 8 years since I have been out of my home country. I have access to my family, like, via Zoom, like via phone calls. But I have, in the past 8 years, I have seen them, like, sometimes I get like a week with them, sometimes I get like a month with them, which has been, it's been very difficult because I want to, grow with them. I want to grow with now I have nephews, but my reality is that it's not as easy to just, settle in my home country. So just to close, my expectations at this point, and this is the reality of many Latin American families and families worldwide, is to just save enough money and then eventually being able to go back to my home country. So this has been my experience, my personal experience of what I've seen in Costa Rica. Thank you.
Great. I think, Gustavo, your story brings up two things that we haven't really discussed. One is drug trafficking, that in conditions where people are desperate, they may turn to either growing the plants that produce the drugs, or being involved in the actual trade, and the trafficking of the drugs at high risk to themselves, especially if they're involved in the trafficking. And of course, generally speaking, people in poverty are more likely to die from a whole variety of causes. So there's that, but there's also this kind of separation. It sounds like you have, Gustavo, seen your family a couple of times in that 8 years that you've been away in the United States. Is that right? Okay,
Correct.
because I know people in the United States who are either Mexican or Central American or Latin or South American, and they haven't seen their families in more than a decade, or and they can't, because if they leave the country and they're undocumented, they can't come back. So it really is kind of, it has this big impact emotionally on families. So, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I do want to see. So we have Juliana Arcanjo, who's joining us from Brazil. I don't know if you want to share anything, but I just want to point you out because it's great. She's one of our family diplomats. I'm glad she's with us. We also have Tanisha from the United States. We have a couple of people joining us that I do not know. And Arthur, I'm assuming you're taking active attendance throughout the meeting, because we have new people joining at different times. But I do want to return to Jeanette, and if you could share more about what Fundación Levántate Mujer is doing to address the needs of women who are suffering from poverty and gender-based violence. And then also Silvia Chura, I don't know if you had the opportunity to speak, but I think you're coming from the Fundación as well. So Jeanette first. And if you could speak briefly, if you would try to speak briefly, we only have 10 minutes left.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Silvia, te doy el paso.
Muchas gracias, licenciada. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Un gusto estar en esta conferencia. Me llamo Silvia Chura Tintaya, tengo 48 años, soy de La Paz, Bolivia, de aquí del Alto. Tengo 48 años, tengo 3 hijos, ya uno de 21, uno de 16 y la pequeña de 11 años. Ya entonces, eh, soy emprendedora desde el 2018 en la Fundación Levántate Mujer, en la cual yo era, antes de entrar, de iniciar a la fundación, yo era una mujer dependiente de mi esposo, ¿no? Era dependiente, en la cual yo sufrí mucha agresión psicológica, golpes, o sea, no tenía derecho a opinar. Incluso una vez le comenté a mi mamá, le dije de que yo quisiera alejarme de mi pareja, pero mi mamá me dijo de que no, porque no puedo alejarme. ¿Por qué? Porque en este mundo de machismo lo que estamos viviendo, entonces, por ese motivo mi mamá no quiso, me dijo de que debo aguantar yo como mujer, porque te van a criticar la gente, eso es lo que me decía a mí, ¿no? Entonces yo acepté también, acepté entonces actualmente, pero sigo con mi esposo y entonces una vez ingresé ya al Levántate Mujer, pero ahí me sentí una mujer eh, empoderada ya. ¿Por qué? Porque ya he tomado los cursos, me he capacitado, entonces también he tenido una decisión propia ya, tenía una decisión propia yo misma, ya podía, como tenía el trabajo, entonces yo ya podía hacer, hablar, decidir. Entonces, gracias a Levántate Mujer, soy una mujer emprendedora. Detrás de este emprendimiento también hay mucho sacrificio, decisiones, más que todo disciplina. Entonces, desde ese tiempo hasta actualmente soy una mujer en la cual que hago masitas, soy repostera, estoy en el área de repostería y sigo haciendo. Mi hija estudia en una universidad privada, puedo cubrir los gastos, tengo una casa propia en la cual yo ya tenía voz y voto para hablar con mi esposo. ¿Tú cuánto colocas y yo cuánto? O sea, al 50 ya era. Entonces yo me siento feliz. Claro, mis logros lo tengo yo, pero mi proyecto de vida no ha sido como yo hubiese querido, ¿no? Entonces, agradezco mucho a Levántate Mujer. Hasta ahora mismo sigo capacitándome porque no es tarde. Debemos seguir, debemos continuar con esta situación ahora que hemos entrado en una situación económica muy drástico, entonces, pero igual seguimos, somos un equipo en mi familia, trabajamos todos. También tengo 3 personas que me ayudan, son 3 personas. Tengo 2 vendedoras y una la que me ayuda aquí en mi casa y me siento muy feliz, muy agradecida con la fundación
Mm,
y
mm,
muchas gracias por escucharme. Y también no acotar por las cosas que está pasando, que sigue pasando en el mundo, que ahora mismo escucho de diferentes países. Es muy lamentable
mm,
que estén vulnerados los derechos de los niños, de las mujeres, de las personas adultas, también de los varones. Eso es lamentablemente, pero si eres una mujer, una persona empoderada, ya no paras ahí, se para. Yo misma le cuento en carne propia, he vivido todo, pero ya ahí he parado. Tenemos capacitaciones en la cual a mí mismo me abre la mente de decir, ya soy de mente más abierta, que ya no, mis derechos son mis derechos.
mm,
Entonces yo los
mm,
transmito también a través de mi conocimiento a mis hijos. Yo les digo, no, esto no puede pasar, ustedes son sus derechos de ustedes, entonces ellos también lo van aplicando. Eso es lo que a mí me fortalece como madre, como mujer, porque tengo 2 nenas, pero también tengo un varoncito, entonces en la cual también aplico con ellos. Y muchas gracias,
mm,
gracias.
Mm. Sylvia, thank you. It's great to hear that you've been able to kind of develop skills, become a pastry chef. I love pastry, so we'd love to taste whatever pastries you're offering at some point. Really great though to hear that Fundación Levántate Mujer is helping. The By the way, those of you maybe reading translations may see Rise Women or something like that. It's just a translation of, if you haven't figured it out, of Fundación Levántate Mujer. We're going to finish off with Jeanette, and then Ines. I'd like to come back to you to kind of, comment on what you've heard. Jeanette, if you can be brief.
Gracias. Bueno, he estado expectante con todo lo que hemos expuesto. Hemos pedido también la compañía de Juana, de Janet y Silvia para que podamos reflejar un poco de no solamente el trabajo que hacemos, sino a quiénes está dirigido nuestro servicio como fundación. Creo que es importante y la fundación siempre ha estado, ¿no? Con la lectura real de cómo nos encontramos dentro del nivel de pobreza. Actualmente, pues el impacto de la pobreza en Bolivia se ha ido agravando por este crecimiento, ¿no? del costo de la canasta básica y la influencia de los alimentos que ha superado en estos últimos años en un 20%, ¿no? Y esto nosotros lo adecuamos o agarramos de sustento para que nuestros programas y a los que va también beneficiado nuestras acciones vean respaldadas, ¿no? Sobre todo nuestro abordaje. Nosotros actualmente estamos enfrentando un nivel de pobreza que va más allá de la mitad ¿no? de nuestra población. Estamos más o menos a 6 millones de bolivianos que sufren, ¿no? de la pobreza y sobre todo esto por los ingresos. Yo me he querido centrar en esta intervención en cuatro aspectos que creo que es necesario ¿no? que los manifestemos. Aquí podría hablar de la pobreza multidimensional, la vulnerabilidad de los hogares, el mercado laboral precario y los efectos sociales que éstas implican. Y en las tres intervenciones que he tenido, ¿no? De Silvia, de Juana y de Janet, pues reflejan necesariamente esto, ¿no? De cómo ellas han ido trabajando este proceso, ¿no? Pero tomando en cuenta que han partido, igual que todos los bolivianos, de una necesidad. En la pobreza multidimensional, aquí en Bolivia más del 60% de la población, sobre todo en el eje central que hago en referencia al Alto y Santa Cruz, padecen de carencias, si bien no monetarias, pero la falta de empleo, la calidad, el acceso limitado a los servicios básicos y los niveles de educación insuficiente hacen que muchas familias no vean alternativas como el emprendimiento no necesario, como el activar algunas acciones que apalen sobre todo las necesidades. También habíamos hablado de la vulnerabilidad de los hogares, ¿no? En el caso, por ejemplo, de Silvia, de Janet también y de ¿no? El alza en los precios de productos que últimamente hemos venido sufriendo ha empujado a los sectores, sobre todo de la clase media, nuevamente hacia la pobreza, ¿no? Para mitigar el impacto. Muchas de las familias se han visto obligadas a reducir el consumo de alimentos o a retirar a los menores, ¿no? Como hemos escuchado en Haití, la explicación, ¿no? del sistema educativo para que los niños trabajen o los adolescentes trabajen y puedan colaborar, ¿no? a las familias. En el mercado laboral precario, ¿no? La informalidad y la baja remuneración que muchas de las mujeres, sobre todo, ¿no? Y de las familias aquí en Bolivia han desarrollado, ¿no? Que se vuelvan sobre todo en grupos vulnerables, afectando principalmente a las mujeres, jefas de hogar y limitando el acceso a beneficios de seguridad social, ¿no? La realidad que vivimos actualmente. Y bueno, por último, los efectos sociales, ¿no? Las crisis estructurales que venimos atravesando va agravando por la falta de los recursos que tenemos, ¿no? Se van incrementando las denuncias de violencia, los delitos sexuales y otras problemáticas, siendo que las mujeres y los niños, niñas y adolescentes se vuelvan, ¿no? En los grupos más afectados. Y es por eso que como Fundación Levántate Mujer hemos ido activando programas que dan respuesta sobre todo, ¿no? En lo que es la atención, en lo que es la prevención y sobre todo, ¿no? Lograr acciones de incidencia para trabajar con estos grupos poblacionales y apalear o por lo menos dar alternativas de respuesta para superar estas ¿no? dificultades que la pobreza no jalan para nuestra región sobre todo. Y el
Mm.
alto, aquí no ha sido uno de los sectores más golpeados por la pobreza, ¿no? El alto sí, dentro de sus indicadores, tiene un alto indicador de pobreza y eso hace que la población, sobre todo, busque alternativas de cómo contrarrestar esto, como lo han visto en los ejemplos ¿no? De las historias de vida que tenemos de nuestras tres usuarias, que es la representación, sobre todo, del conglomerado a la que va dirigida nuestras acciones.
Okay. Jeanette, thank you for giving us kind of this broader perspective on Fundación Levantante Mujer and then the situation in Bolivia. I want to finish off with Ines, and then we will let you guys go. Want to respect your time, but appreciate this kind of rich dialogue with people across the world. Ines.
Yeah, this is all great to learn about. Also, I really value what Sylvia's story and what Jeanette was saying, how economic independence is such a important tool to break away from violence in many cases, from certain relationships. And I think it's great. The name is Levántate Mujer. I think it's doing like a great job of providing this space. Sometimes in a lot of our countries, it would be great if we had a bigger like government support or a bigger like outside support to be able to achieve these goals, but that's not always available. And when it's not available, I think these kind of community initiatives of helping each other and giving each other the safe space, the resources, the support to be able to develop these skills. It's an excellent tool to get out of these difficult situations. I've been reading the conversations in the chat, and everyone's sharing different resources and experiences that they've noticed in their countries. I've shared a couple resources too, so feel free to check those. And yeah, someone was asking what are examples of how, I think it was David who was asking how different countries like tackle these different issues. We were talking about an example of these rotating savings programs that exist in many communities all over the world. But yeah, I don't know if we have time still, but I would love to hear other examples of how communities, like how do we tackle these issues when we don't have a big governmental support or a bigger network? How can we tackle these issues at a community level? I'm reading different experiences from other countries and would love to learn more.
Yeah, there's lots more to learn, but unfortunately we're at time. However, we are going to continue these conversations, and I do want to share, by the way, the next dialogues, because there's a series of dialogues this year, as many of you know. So The next dialogue is on August 16th and is on online bullying and sexual predation. So you're encouraged to join us for that one. In September, we'll be talking about war. In October, again about gender-based violence, and then in November we'll be returning to poverty, and then finally in December we'll be talking about climate change. So I raise these things because this forum, these dialogues are a way to kind of try to address, to bring awareness, not only to the ways in which families are impacted by a variety of issues across the world. So your perspectives from different parts of the world really enrich the discussion. But in the long term, that we are trying to organize networks of families across the world impacted by 5 different issues: war, poverty, climate change, gender-based violence, and the internet. And then from those networks to identify volunteers who we then train with in collaboration with other nonprofits to then participate in power. In other words, to be placed with governments, businesses, nonprofits, and media to be able to advocate for those families in those networks. So the idea is not just a dialogue, but to actually bring us together to affect change and put pressure on governments and other institutions to make sure that the needs of families are met. So really appreciate you guys contributing to this process. And I want to thank everybody here. There are some people we did not get to hear from by voice. So Tice is one of our family diplomats. She actually moderated the last dialogue, and she was the person identified, I think, as David in the Zoom chat. But that's her husband. She just happened to be on her husband's Zoom. We have Juliana, who is one of our family diplomats joining us from Brazil, who was contributing to the dialogue via the Zoom chat. Sorry, we didn't get to hear more from you. Fatima and her son Millie, who joined us from Pakistan, really wanted to thank you for coming with your son and for your son contributing to the dialogue. And to the rest of you who participated actively in the Zoom chat and attended, really appreciate your participation. Ines, thanks again. Look forward to seeing you again. We want to maintain this relationship. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you very much for your time. Bye.
Thank you.